Let's talk about implementing token-based security. The first thing we're going to need is something to create a token, right? A typical approach is to create an endpoint at the level of the API that accepts your username and password. If those check out, a token can be returned in the response message. A token typically consists of three things. A payload, for example a piece of JSON that contains some generic token info, like when the token was created, and some info about the user, like a username or email address. Then we have the signature. You don't want someone to be able to alter the token. Signing it makes sure of that. A signature is a hash of the payload. That means that if someone alters the payload after the signature was generated, the signature won't match with the payload anymore. So you know someone altered it. For signing something, you need a key, which is generated from a secret. We'll get to that in the demo that's coming up right after this. And last, or rather first from the point of view of the token string, the header. This header contains information the receiver of the token can use to learn about essential token information it might need for parsing and validating it, like the key algorithm used for signing. We were talking about a login endpoint at the level of the API. In the first demo, we'll create that endpoint. So from that endpoint, the token is potentially returned in the response message. The request to that endpoint is coming from a client application. This can be an ASP.NET Core web app, an Angular application, a mobile application, any type of app really that wants access to our API. In our case, the client is Postman or the Swagger documentation UI. It's advised to use Post for accessing this endpoint, with the username and password in the request body. Web servers typically log request URLs, but not request bodies. And you don't want usernames and passwords ending up in web server logs. At level of the API, we then need to ensure that the token is required. So that's what we'll do next. We will make sure that our API, save for the login endpoint of course, can only be accessed with a valid token. From that follows that client apps must send the token on each request to the API to gain access. No valid token means no access. Tokens are sent to the API as bearer tokens. To do that, we set the authorization header value of the request to bearer, which is the authentication scheme, followed by our token. Ensuring the API is only accessible with a valid token is what we'll do in the second demo. Let's dive in.